Test, test, test. Greetings, everybody. Welcome to Chess Dojo's live coverage of the Cairns Cup. With the wrong title, man. I put up a starting soon thing and I still didn't get things right. Hi, Pizza Racer. Greetings and welcome. All right. How are we looking now? I'm not 100% sure that I've got the time control right, so I'm going to go check on that real quick here. So we're gonna go back to the tournament, and maybe home will have the information. Schedule format. Let's click on format. 40 and 90 followed by 30 minutes with a 30-second increment. Wait a minute, I guessed that correctly. Okay, let's go back to our games. On this board, did I have Alice on this board, I think? That looks right. Okay, so the only thing I can make like maybe slightly more clear with that info is we could say 40, 90 plus 30. They used to say sudden death, but it's not sudden death anymore. Maybe G for the game. We'll do it like that. Also, hi Mato, welcome to the stream. I hope you will enjoy and be interested in these games here. Let me grab up my two game windows above all else. And so the most exciting game to me just visually is the one between Carissa and Humpy at the moment, just because it looks like an absolute mess. Alice's game looks pretty messy as well. She's just played e5, attacking the rook. Pawn probably can't take because if queen takes an undefended bishop on d7. White could even play pawn takes e5, rook takes e5, attacking the queen to make sure to capture that pawn, and then still collect the bishop next move probably. So this e5 is probably going to lead to rook h6, pawn takes pawn, knight to g5. Basically, black's just playing for checkmate while the center gets completely torn apart. So I'm going to put an evaluation on this one, and we've got a lot of work to do to figure out what's going on in either of these games. The players also, they're both on both boards that are about move 25, so they don't have a ton of time to play these next 15 moves. I guess Alice is reasonably comfortable, Alina's under pressure, Carissa's comfortable, and Humpy's under pressure. So we've got a similar dynamic where on both boards, white looks like they're better. The clock reflects that they're probably better. And black is coming under pressure on the board and on the clock at the same time. How are you all doing today? If I'm going into anything too fast, if you need some context, if you want to know what's this tournament, who are these players, whatever it might be that you're interested in, throw your questions in the chat and I will get to them. I'm going to prioritize throwing some kind of an eval up on this Alice Lee board, and then I'm going to tell you a little bit about the tournament anyway. Who are these players? Why do I care? You find out a little bit about me through that, and then we'll take it from there and watch. The next hour or so is going to be the players making it to move 40 and time control, and then we'll see if there's still endgames after that. But I feel like we've got at least a very combative 1 hour in front of us as we're picking up these games kind of at the hottest moment from a certain perspective. I mean, every phase of a chess game has its own kind of interesting points. You know, the opening has interesting stuff to think about. The endgame's got interesting stuff to think about. But, you know, if you were going to rate the games based on, you know, hotness factor, chili peppers, something like that, these positions are both really hot right now. The sensei bar is not accurate. I just had to stick a number in it or it showed me a huge error. So, feels like Alina's position is just falling apart. Can black really mate here? Probably not mate Mato, but maybe, you know, achieve something usefully violent. So I'm going to calculate one basic variation, and then I'm going to throw an eval on. So my basic variation is going to go rook h6. Pawn takes pawn. Knight g5. Queen f4. Knight f3 check. Should it be bishop or queen? We'll go with queen. Check, king here. Now, in this position, we could go much further, and these players will. But they'll be looked. Rook f to f8 was played after 10 minutes of thought. Okay, I was going to evaluate this as probably not working for black, but saying we could go further. We could look at rook f6. We could look at bishop h3. Essentially, I don't believe in black's position at this point. It looks borderline lost to me. Like a move like rook f6. I could even imagine answering with pawn takes pawn, rook takes queen, bishop takes, check here, and literally no defense against rook d8 for black. Black doesn't have to throw the bishop h3 check, but they're, it feels like they're literally just going to lose to the c pawn and the back rank king. At this point, that's what it feels like to me. So let's quickly look at rook ff8, which was answered very, very quickly by Alice. Yeah, I mean, she knew what she wanted to do. She just explodes the center. And I'm just going to evaluate this as white's winning. It's a little bit of a guess, but I'm going to evaluate it as white's winning. What happens if I put a number bigger than 2? How does the eval bar react? Let's say I put 3. It just scoots the 2 down. That's still visually reasonable, right? Okay, well, I'm just checking. I'm just checking. I'm not going to go overboard. We're going to call it 2 for now. E takes d6. Basically, if black takes and white takes with the queen, and black trades here, and rook takes f3, bishop takes, queen d7, everything's falling apart. It's like completely busted. Can black keep the game going with a move like c6? Knight e5, right? Kind of breaking down the blockade. No, black is really on death's door where a game like this can kind of end. I'm even going to go up to 2.5. I know that's like an extreme evaluation after only looking at the board for a minute or two. Is white up a pawn? Yes, white's up a pawn, but I feel like these pieces are just collapsing. So I want to say plus 2 point something. How bad is it if black plays pawn takes pawn, queen takes pawn, rook d8? Okay, maybe I got a little excited. I'm going to go 2.2, 2.3. And now we're going to take a look at the other board as well. Oh, and we're also going to say what's going on here. So, folks, this is a round-robin tournament. There are 10 players. They each play every other player in the tournament. It is like a female-only version of a super tournament. So a super tournament is when the top players in the world play a round-robin together, meaning there's 0 to 1, outsiders or weaker links or whatever you might want to call it. I'm sorry, my computer's not working here. I hope my audio is smooth. So for example, we just watched a tournament called Norway Chess very, very recently. And in Norway Chess, they had the top 5 players in the world plus one player who was rated about number 10th in the world, right? Now we're watching a tournament where you've got, let's say, you've got 10 players and they're all in the top 40 in the world among women, and most of them are in the top 20. Okay, there's just Alice and Carissa are kind of the outliers because they're from the host country, America. Carissa's number 25 in the world for women, and Alice is number 40. Okay, but they're going to go up at this tournament, as you're going to see. I put their scores above Alice's board there, so you can see how they're doing 6 rounds in. There are 3 rounds to go, I guess. We're in round 7 right now. So, yeah, this is kind of a tournament of a lot of the best female players in the world. Although, notably, it is missing a couple, right? It's missing Ho Yifan, who doesn't play in women's events, but is the best female chess player. It's missing Zhu Wenjun, who's the sitting women's champion. And it's missing number 3 in the world, Lei Tingjie. So it's missing the top 3 female players in the world. I assume they got invited. And, yeah, I don't know. Maybe they didn't play because some of them had just been playing in Norway chess. I know that Zhu Wenjun and Lei Tingjie were both just playing in Norway chess, where the world champion had a pretty mediocre result of 1 win, 1 loss, and then a million draws. Lei won 3 games and gained some points, but not a tremendous performance either, given that they were the top players there. Let's have a look at what's going on in Carissa's game, though, because this is very hot. So we saw the position here after b3, queen g4. This is where we picked up. Rook d4 was Carissa's brilliant move. Below me, as I was talking about other things, I couldn't see it because I have, I don't have a screen here to see multiple things at once. The rook was not accepted by Humpy, but the idea would have been rook e8 check, and then rook takes, queen take, pawn takes equals queen. Sorry, not a queen yet, as it takes. Pawn takes here, and to top things off, it's back rank checkmate at the end, defended by the bishop on c5. At the very start of the combination, there's one other branch for black that looks pretty important. King f7 instead of trading and promoting white's pawn to a new queen. But then there's simply queen d5, check, and mate in one move. The king has nowhere to go. Right? So rook d4, powerful move. Basically, Carissa tried to calculate a forced win here. She spent 18 minutes on rook d4 from this position here. And so 18 minutes, and when she played this move, you better believe she thought this was game over. Black played knight e7 after 46 seconds. Wow. So Humpy was ready for rook d4. She saw it coming. And Carissa stopped and hesitated for 4 minutes after an 18-minute think. That's a very bad sign for Carissa that she wasn't ready for this move. Now we get here. Holy moly, what's going on? I feel like the line could be bishop takes rook. There's no bishop takes rook because of queen takes queen. There's no rook recaptures because of rook e8. So it could be bishop takes rook, queen check, king g2, bishop takes rook, bishop takes c7, queen takes d7, bishop takes rook with an extra piece for white. That looks completely winning for white. She's taken on d8. Queen d1 check, there's also queen f1. Then white plays queen f1, which almost seems simpler. Queens trade. There's still no rook d8 because of rook e8. So bishop takes e3, and then bishop takes c7, and white should get that rook for free and emerge with a full extra piece with just nothing on the board. So this looks 100% loss for black. I literally don't see how they extend the game another move or two. And it would be nice to see Carissa with some pristine calculation because I know she's been working on it. She outcalculated me in some training recently. So if she outcalculates some GMs, then I can feel a little better about it. Stream down, says Nordovik. Why? Why stream down? Stupid computer. Why are you so terrible? YouTube has managed to keep its stream going, maybe. Oh my god, I've just got a spinning wheel of whatever here. Up again. Shameful. Shameful. So shameful. Takes. Queen takes. FG3. HG3. Who knows? White could have maybe also just taken the bishop, right? But Alice is playing pretty quickly. So, like Humpy, Alice thought on her opponent's time when her opponent was thinking long and hard about this move, and she was ready to play this quickly. Then her opponent still hesitating about which way to go. Alice prepares, plays queen d6 quickly as well. Prepares, plays this move as well. Black's hesitating on every move, and Alina is running out of resources both on the board and on the clock to resist Alice here. Now, I assume the move here would be rook a to d8. But then I guess it's relevant that after knight e5, bishop c8, queen d8, the knight's defending d8, so there's no back rank mate. Okay. So this is now analysis, folks. Hang on, I'm playing a move for Alina. Knight e5 coming in, bishop c8. Queen d8, rook d8, there's just nothing. You know, the queen's covering knight f7. This rook's blocked from giving any back rank mates. Okay, Alina's played a move. She's played bishop c6 here, no rook d8. So that completely leaves this knight hanging with the idea of winning back a piece right here. Oof. Okay. David feeling very suspicious about this. But I guess it makes my +2 evaluation seem a little too high. On the other board, Humpy has resigned. So she played all these moves very quickly, but Carissa just played queen f1. And yeah, Humpy played all those moves quickly because she already knew she'd lost. So, 18-minute think. You find the forced win, and the game is over. I guess Carissa had seen knight e7 coming, but she was just being super double checky because she knew that she didn't need her time for anything else here, right? And I'll show you, folks, the queen's hanging, so there's no time for queen d7 with the bishop here. You can't trade on e3 and hope for white to recapture because white will play queen takes d1. So forced is queen takes queen. White could take back with knight or king. Honestly, it doesn't even matter. Whatever, I'll take with the king, I guess, this time. Bishop takes rook. Because you can't, no other move other than bishop takes rook avoids rook e8, which is super, super GG. I mean, you could get rid of the back rank mate, but still after rook check, king here, bishop takes, you're going to be down a queen, right? So the key variation, I guess, would be bishop takes rook, and then white would take the pawn, and we can see this pawn is going to cost black the whole rook. Not only that, I think black's going to be down 2 pieces, if I'm honest, because basically if you save your bishop from this pawn, then white captures the rook for free, and this pawn's still going to cost you your bishop, right? Whereas, if you move your rook somewhere, before playing d8, white can play pawn takes bishop, and there's nothing you can do to prevent d8 next move. So it's 2 full extra pawns for Carissa after queen f1. That's what makes it more precise than here, here, here. Black is actually able to clean up the d7 pawn. White takes here. Obviously, white's winning. I don't think so, Pizza Racer. I think that's just what sound like on chess.com. But let me double check if there's 2 audio captures in OBS. Nope, just 1. That's just what sound like. It's like a click, click. That's how they did it. So, So with queen takes f1. So by playing queen f1, Carissa ensures queens off the board and 2 extra pieces. And that is a massive crushing victory for her. So she improves her score. I guess I'll update the info since I have it selected and that game is over. Carissa is now at 4 wins, 1 draw, and 2 losses. She's won more than half her games. And she's probably up about 20 rating points nearly. Because she's one of the lower rated players in this tournament. Okay, up 16 rating points, but it's a very, very big performance so far. And it's a great sign when you're able to just win a lot of your games versus eking out 1 or 2 wins and a lot of draws. To be able to win a lot of games, she's lost 2, but to be able to create these wins shows you how high you can get sometimes when you're a younger developing player. Let's see if Alice had a quick move ready for bishop c6. She played rook e5. Oh, that's an evil looking move from Alice. What she's looking to do is put the queen on a square, such as the 3 I've highlighted, where she'll be able to play rook takes knight, attacking the queen, and black won't have time to regain their piece. So this move aims to more or less end the game. The move queen g4 may or may not lose to knight h2. Alina has just tried queen g4. So that idea is going to be brought into question. Presumably, white can also try to win the game with simplification by getting a queen trade out of this. The idea is if you get a queen trade, and then black trades everything on f3, then at the end you play rook b7. And because of black's weak back rank, you probably win the b7 pawn, and then you've got 2 connected passed pawns. The endgame is like super over, nothing more to think about if that sort of a line happens. But before we look at that, let's see if knight h2 doesn't end the game, shall we? So, knight h2, attacking the queen. Now I'm moving pieces to help us with our calculation. Alice has already moved. Wow, she's playing so fast. She's played knight h2 after just 1 minute of thought, and she's got all this time on her clock, so it really feels like she's very, very confident here. Would I double check a little bit with 25 minutes on the clock? Probably. Alice is almost like more confident than I almost feel or believe anyone should be. Okay, Alina played queen c4, but that looks like she's down a full piece. Just down a full piece. Alice could trade on c6 or take on e6. Either way, white is up a full piece. The game is simply over. Simply over. Fabiano's peak in terms of his level of play, Nickel Alloy. I mean, his play has changed over time. Let me go to my eval bar and go to +3 at least on this one, because this is going crazy here. +3. Full piece. You know, we won't. I mean, to some extent, Fabiano's peak was that streak at the Sinkfield Cup when he won 7 games in a row. That was about the best level we've seen from Fabi. I think also, like, all the way up through his match with Magnus was kind of like the top year in Fabi's career. And, you know, that was his peak rating, I think, was when he played the match with Magnus and drew 12 games in a row against Magnus. Basically, he was co-champion, or maybe nobody was a champion, but to me, I mean, he drew a match with the world champion. That is pretty darn high. To me, that's probably peak Fabi. Also, it was pretty close to peak Magnus, right? So that he drew that match against Magnus at Magnus's peak. I would say that's a plausible answer to your question. No, I'm not the greatest expert. You know, I haven't always... I've followed basically every game he's played, actually, yeah. I didn't maybe study every single game the deepest possible. Okay, so now Alice is thinking here. Why are you saying, uh-oh, Pizza Racer, what's wrong? Everything breaking again? You think Humpy was in first place in the tournament? I think that yesterday, Humpy won her game. Whoops. I think yesterday Humpy won her game against Alice, right? No, she won her game against Harika yesterday. Humpy, yeah, she was a full point ahead of Carissa before today. Now they're tied. Now they're tied for first place. So yeah, so Humpy's having a perfectly decent tournament as well till she ran into this brutality today. Shall we double check with Alice? Make sure we're up a piece, folks. I have not seen a match of his against Leela at night odds. No nickel alloy. Can you tell me more about that match? Like, when was it played? What was the time control? About where does Fabi rank on a list of best players of the 21st century? So basically, Alex, the like 18 and 19-year-olds and 20-year-olds who are really promising now, they've only been really good for a year or two, right? So they can't make it to the top of that list yet, right? Like, let's say Gukesh, who's world champion. Well, he's only been world champion for 6 months, so he hasn't yet proven that he's one of the greatest players, maybe? Or by best, you mean just playing at the best level? And let's see how Kashlyn Skaya was doing. Yeah, Alina had 4 out of 6 going into this round. So she was in second place. She hadn't yet lost a game. She had 2 wins and a bunch of draws. I'm pretty sure she's losing here to Alice. No one in chat has hit me with a variation proving that I'm wrong. Alice has captured the free piece here. So it looks like Alice will move into the lead as well, right? With 4.5 out of 7 after she wins. She'll be tied with Carissa and Humpy, half a point ahead of Alina. So yeah, it's a very close tournament with 3 more rounds to go. I intend to cover a few more of those rounds this week. That's my dream version of this week here. So the best player of the 21st century would be Magnus. That pick is easy. Then, depending what you mean by best, like the person who played at the highest level, or the person who played at the highest level compared to people at their peak, because people are constantly playing a little bit better, you know what I mean? Like, in a certain sense, I know other people have different opinions about this, okay, but from a certain perspective, you know, to get to where he is, Gukesh had to study the games of Kramnik and Anand and Topalov, right? That they played 15 to 20 years ago. From a certain perspective, probably the quality of play of players who are now rated 2790 would be better than the quality of play of players rated 2790 10 or 15 years ago. Still, I'm inclined to rate everybody a little bit. Personally, I'd be inclined to rate everybody sort of according to their time, even if we're only talking 10, 20 years. You know, chess is constantly changing. So to me, I would want to answer Alex's question with number 1, Magnus, number 2, Vishy, who I think came out slightly ahead of Kramnik and Topalov in all their clashes. So I want to say Magnus, Vishy, Kramnik, Topalov, Fabi. So Fabi basically being the best player of the 21st century so far who was not world champion, but I'm going to give the first 4 spots to the 4 people who've been world champion in the 21st century. Sorry, there's a 5th and 6th. There's Ding and Gukesh, but I'm going to leave Gukesh a couple more years to pass those guys. And yeah, they don't have the peak ratings of those other people, so I'll go maybe Fabi, and then it would maybe be Gukesh, Ding, Nepo, something like that. Fabi definitely would have to be rated above Nepo, I think. Maybe I'm getting it wrong. I didn't put a lot of thought into that answer. So. Queen c2. I sort of thought that Alice would have the move rook f1 here. She played it. And against rook e8, there is no back rank mate, but queen d6 I think avoids losing anything. h6 played. Yeah, white's up a piece for nothing. Absolute nothing here. Alice trades a piece, which makes sense. Then you might want to bring this knight towards one of these 2 squares and the king. You can play rook c5 and take this pawn, but black might take your b pawn. Trading pawns doesn't help white at all. So my priority here would be to use the knight. The knight is going to be most crushing in a middle game. So I would want to bring the knight towards this king. So I'd probably go knight g4, reinforcing f2, defending the rook, and knight takes h6 will be a super winning move in many cases. Like, let's say I play knight g4, and black played rook to d8. You could argue that it's even easier to win this position with knight takes h6 and just trade the knight for pawns, look, than to win it normally, so to speak, than to keep the knight, right? Like, if I trade the knight for those 3 pawns, this looks even easier to win for white, right? So that's why I'd be inclined to bring the knight to g4 here as Alice. That's my thought there. Thanks for the info on those matches, Nickel Alloy. Very interesting. Knight odds, Leela crushing crushing Fabi and Naka, apparently. I got crushed at Blitz Time Controls by some engine on Lee Chess, and I have to slow it down to like 15 minutes a game to be able to win at night odds. This tournament meets the criteria for norms, Elliot asks. Carissa could get a GM norm here. Well, let me quickly look at the list of players she's playing. My first spot would be absolutely yes, like I'm almost certain. So let's click. She's played GM Harika in the first round, GM Nino in the third round, GM Maria in the fourth round, GM Nana in the fifth round, GM Tan in the sixth. She's playing almost all GMs, yeah. It looks like she's played 3 IMs. She'll play 3 IMs and 6 GMs over the course of the tournament. So yes, this tournament's well above the level needed to make GM norms, which means if anyone's performance rating is over 2600, it'll be a GM norm. Currently, Carissa's performance rating is 2600 exactly. So for a GM norm, I would guess that in her remaining 2 games, she needs a win and a draw, 1.5 out of 2. Just looking at her opponent's ratings, I'm eyeballing that because she's got Alice left, who's 2389. It means that Alice and Carissa probably can't both get GM norms, but it means that one of them is very likely to get a GM norm since they're playing each other. No, 2 draws would drop her performance rating for sure because both her opponents are rated under 2600. And I imagine the math is going to be more or less exactly the same for Alice. Oh, it doesn't yet show her winning, so I can't yet see her performance rating. But yeah, it's going to be basically the same thing for Alice. So they're going to need one. Oh, she goes for the pawn trade. Yeah. Not my choice, but she's the active tournament player. Mato, it is correct that if they both won in round 8, then in theory they could get a friendly mutual GM norm draw. You call that awesome. I only think it's awesome if they play to the death. If they agree to a draw and move 13 and both get GM norms, I don't even count those norms. FIDE will count them. Because FIDE has... I don't know. Well, it's hard to say exactly. It's easier for me to just say I don't count it than for FIDE to come up with a system by which they do or don't count things. So things are tricky for them, but I think it's cheating to agree to a draw in 10 moves and then call yourself a GM. So I wish FIDE could figure out a way to reflect that. They can both make GM Mato without making any 12-move draws. You know, they can just play more tournaments after this one. I know there is a match between India and US, nickel alloy. I don't know enough to know who's going to win the match. I think it's 5-on-5 with something like 3 top players, 1 top female, 1 famous person. Like, I think the famous people are Levi Rosman and Sagar Shah, IMs. I guess that says something that I know who the famous people are, but not who the top players are. Okay, some moves are coming in here. Maybe rook d6. Rook a8, offering a queen trade? Well, that's pretty easy. So nickel alloy, I mean, the US and India could each bring 3 players basically in the top 10 or 15 in the world. So it could be like an awesome clash on the top. Okay. Alina played rook e8 and maybe resigned. No, white played queen g7, winning 1 more pawn, and that was the pawn that broke the camel's back. Fabi, Gukesh, Hikaru, that's 3 very good players, yeah. Tell me more. Who else is there? Arjun? Prague? We're going to update Alice's score here. Now with 3 wins, 3 draws, and 1 loss. Tani and Divya. Hikaru versus Gukesh, Fabi versus Arjun. Those are very even matchups. Carissa versus Divya. That's a very good close matchup as well. GG to Alice Lee. Nicely done. Winning this game. She is now also at 4.5 out of 7 officially with a 2600 performance rating like Carissa. And she would need to win 1 game and draw 1 in her remaining 2 games against Harika and Carissa. Yeah. Tani versus Ethan Vaz. I don't know who Ethan Vaz is. An Indian chess player. I am at the age of 12. Oh, he looks cute. Born in 2011. So he became an IM already 2 years ago. Now he's 14. So those are the juniors, huh? Okay. Sounds like a very, very even matchup, Alex. Or everybody, off of what I'm being told. That US versus India match sounds very, very balanced. So I have no idea who's going to win. Sounds like a 50-50-ish proposition. Total toss-up. Yeah. What's the time control, Merles? That is an important part of any event. I assumed it would have a bad time control. That was part of what I was asking about, was players and time control. $10+0, huh? And resigning's illegal? So, like, Alina would have to keep playing here under those rules? That's not the worst rule for an exhibition match. But 10+0, that's a terrible time control. I guess that'll favor the US a tiny bit. Just because Gukesh is less of a speed player. Like, notably less of a speed player. I would also guess that Levy's better than Sagar, but I might be wrong on that. I haven't really seen many of their games, but I think Levy plays a lot of things like Titled Tuesday and stuff, so he's got experience playing speed chess against good players. I think he's got a very high online blitz rating for an IM. So I would guess Levy would have the advantage versus Sagar, and Hikaru would have the advantage versus Gukesh. Yeah, if it were classical, I would call this a match of toss-up, but at 10-minute chess, the US has the advantage. And at 10 minutes, I won't watch it, actually. I would have watched it if it were classical. Let's look if there are any other interesting games going on today in this tournament. There is one. So let's take a look. Let me get my eval bar out. And we'll say, what will we say? The eval here, just like a first look. It looks like white's up a pawn, but black's more active than white. So we're going to go 0.3. 0.25. I really don't believe in this extra pawn. Or, I mean, I really believe in the active pieces and the weakened king. I like the plan h5, h4 for black, poking at this stuff here. It's possible, Alex, but Arjun might be a slightly better speed player than Fabi, but it's going to be by a much smaller margin than any of the other than the other two matchups I mentioned, I think. You know, Fabi's become a good speed player, right? So if Arjun's a little bit better, it's still a very small advantage. Whereas Hikaru versus Gukesh is a big advantage in rapid, and I think also Levy. Although I don't know for sure, but if I'm right, the advantage to Levy is like much more substantial. Yeah. Shows you the greatest matchup is of no interest if you ruin the time control. I mean, I only have so much time to watch chess games, right? Foos Chess. So there are enough classical games to keep me occupied. Then I have no reason to watch anything less. It's not like I'm like super, super against it. It's just that there's something better. You know what I mean? It's like, it would be like, for example, if somebody never ate green beans because there were broccoli available every single day. It doesn't mean they don't like green beans. It's just broccoli is too abundant or whatever, you know. That's that explanation didn't make sense, but I think you already knew in advance what I mean. Or like, I like Magic the Gathering, but I don't play it because chess is available, right? I only have so much time to play games, so I play chess. If someone said, I can give you an extra 2 hours in your day, you get a 26-hour day, but you have to play 2 hours of Magic the Gathering, then I would probably say, sure, hook me up with those magical 2 hours of Magic the Gathering, you know? It's been a long, long time since I've played Magic the Gathering. All right, I expected this move going after the A-pawn. White is also showing some concern for the king side, bringing the rook over to shore things up. It feels like White's going to be willing to sack one of these two pawns just to coordinate the pieces. I see something like queen c6, rook e6 coming next, maybe. I have some old unopened boxes of Magic the Gathering boosters. And I think now that it's been, you know, something like 15 years since I've played, they might be worth something. Or maybe they're not worth anything. I don't know. But Magic the Gathering, the stuff often becomes valuable after a long time. If it was Catan, yeah, I would say no thanks. I would literally not add 2 hours a day if I have to pay attention to the Catan. Like if I can pretend to play Catan, you know, and think about other things. But in the spirit of this thought experiment, yeah, Catan is like below anything I would eat, right? And a 10-minute chess game between Hikaru and Gukesh is not below something that I would eat if it were free, right? So I would watch those games if Queen A1 would be very greedy Warriors Boy production, and I don't think it's what this Rook A1 move signals, right? Rook A1 signals that Maria wants to be active, right? So if she then played Queen A1, it would be surprising. I mean, it could be some weird geometry where the queen covers things from the corner, and then you can play D5 going after F6, but I think giving the knight the square on E5, it just won't work out. Your queen will just be bad on A1. So I don't see it happening. There's Queen C6, the move I predicted. Your sister developed Magic the Gathering. Cool. If she were still there, I've got some ideas for improving the game. But Paul, Magic the Gathering is a card game, like collectible card game or trading card game, where there are different cards that you can use to play the game, and you can have better or worse cards than other people. So people search for the better cards. You buy them in packs, and then your pack is going to have like 12 cards you don't need and 2 or 3 cards you do want. And then, so it can take a long time to put together a really good deck of the cards that you want. But basically, there's a strategy in selecting the cards that you want that go together to accomplish a strategy. And then you're going to play your deck against somebody else's deck of cards in some kind of a combat. In Magic, it's sort of like magical creatures of yours are attacking, and your opponent has magical creatures that defend them and attack you. The idea is it's kind of a wizard's duel. Magic the Gathering, that's sort of the story above it. Wizard's duel, 2 wizards casting spells at each other. So there's strategy both in assembling like the cards that you're going to put together, and strategy in how you play it out then. You know, when you attack, when you defend, what order you play your cards, etc. It's a great concept, and other people have done better versions of it after Magic the Gathering. There are things about the game that are super entertaining. All right, so I'm mildly surprised by Nana's move F5. These players have 5 moves to go till move 40, so there's a lot of pressure on these couple moves. This move F5 blocks off the rook sort of for good, so to speak. Gives it a really hard rock to chafe against. But it felt really nice to have that pawn on a dark square where you could anchor a knight on e5 or g5 at some point, to me. Now this knight feels kind of forever uprooted. So if white plays something like bishop d5, I'm curious what black's thinking of doing. You know? Yeah, I should have probably just put it at basically equal, you know? I should have just called it equal. That was kind of what my heart was telling me, but then I was saying since white was up a pawn, maybe white would be slightly favored, like black has to prove something. I'll call it 0.1 for now. Even though I don't particularly like this move f5, what happens after bishop d5? Bishop d5. The idea is basically just to take the knight and then harass the black king forever with checks, right? Another option for white would be to start going rook f2, queen e1, rook f1, just looking for a draw, but queen d2, and you don't want to give this pawn for nothing. Finally, queen c7 prepares also maybe bishop d5 for the next move. You think bishop d5, the knight would have dodged away from it, right? Yeah, that makes sense. The knight dodges away, prepares to maybe come here with some attacking potential. Yeah, for sure, some potential. Yeah, so this queen c7 move makes a lot of sense. It could be followed up by bishop d5 or by d5, d6, etc. Now, will black play rook a3? Bishop d5? Queen e8? It's possible. Or again, rook e7 is possible. But then it would have made more sense to just play rook e6 last move without weakening the king position. I really don't like this move weakening the king position. It's just on, you know, instinct or principle. It's not, I can't prove it, but I do not like moving that pawn. I wanted these two pawns to be my pawn cover and this pawn to be my battering ram. Maybe part of why I don't like f5 is because I really wanted to play h5, h4 at some point, and that makes me need the pawns where they are even more. But okay, we get queen c7. Nana thinking here, down to 2 minutes, just like Maria. Maria thought 3 minutes on queen c7, more time than she has for the rest of the game. Sorry, till move 40 for the next 4 moves. Nana getting down trouble as her with a couple minute thought on this move. And the main candidate moves to me are rook e7 and rook a3. Because as black, I mean, if you let white take the a pawn, then you're really committed to checkmate. And it's not like super easy to checkmate this king. It's got a whole posse around it, and the queen will come back pretty quickly. She won't be gone forever. Rook a3 played, defending the pawn. So the idea is bishop d5, queen e8, which is like very, 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 very equal. If white trades everything off on f7, that rook ending would be Very drawish. So Foos wonders if black could have... Oh, yeah, instead of taking the pawn, maybe played rook here, preparing rook d2. I think, again, there, Foos, white would have played this move bishop d5. Right? And you're forced to play queen e8, and then you really wish your rook had taken a pawn. Can you still draw this rook ending? Maybe. What if white makes you wait, and then they prepare to trade next move? Feels quite risky, right? So it seemed to me like black really actually wanted to keep the a-pawn on the board here. And they did. And bishop d5, queen e8 comes in relatively quickly. When you're this close to flagging. Is it possible for black to prepare sort of king f6 to get the knight out? At some point, yeah, that could be a move. A move for white also is g4. Computer is dying for some reason. It says the CPU is at 5%, but actually it's like burning hot. It's true. Sorry, there's going to be a little clatter here as I move things a tiny bit. Anything that could help here? Calming down at all? Okay, we've got to move. G4. Yep. Trying to get the rook going. Cranking at f7. And now black's quite passive here. So black got one pawn back on it. Very hard to coordinate black. I actually like white a little bit more now than I did before. I'm just going to guess that something has gone wrong for black. I'm going to jump my eval to show a significant advantage for white. Seems like every white piece is better than every black piece. Rook a6, covering f6. So the idea is like pawn takes f6, rook f6, covering the weaknesses. Or even pawn f6, g5, f6, and you take with the rook. Because the rook's there. That should prevent a devastating breakthrough. I think 2 moves to go here. Is that a pawn up for white, though, if they play gf and then fg? Can I even count pawns? Yes, unless queen e3 destroys white. Yeah. Pawn takes, rook f6, pawn takes, and then black plays queen e3 check right there. And I think white loses everything with check. Oh. So what do you do after rook f6? White trades everything off first, and then gf will be an extra pawn for white. Yeah, full extra pawn for white. So I was right. White had suddenly jumped to a real advantage. And Warrior Boys production, you guessed that right as well, that maybe white should just trade off and then take the pawn. So now they got the 30 minutes added. And let's assess this rook and pawn ending. It looks like a draw. I just moved the eval bar up so much for white, but because I think it's a draw, I'm going to drop my eval bar to 0.5. My eval bar moves as I see further ahead instead of as the position changes, right? So what I'm seeing here is basically the following variation. This is just the first thing that popped into my head. Rook goes active, and black just comes after these pawns. I think rook a2 might accomplish something similar, but the point is here. This pawn's just too hard to defend with the king over here, I feel like, right? Here. Something like this is a dead draw, for example, right? And then what else could we do from here? We could try centralizing the king. Rook takes. King e3. Now material's equal, but black's super passive. This move is going to be really strong. So that wasn't so good. King f2, huh? They're playing moves pretty quickly. Rook b6 was played. Right, the trade improved white's rook. So black doesn't go for the automatic trade on f5, just here. Pawn takes, the king will come here. Rook b1, then the king will still get in first. Yes, this is drawish. Gf5 was a terrible move for black in this variation. But, you know, here maybe the best move would be something like rook to the second rank and then attack these pawns from behind. But there's no reason to do this. White could use the rook to defend the d pawn. The first guess about the evaluation here, Paul, is based on this. White's up a pawn in a rook ending. But it's very, you know, something like half of rook endgames up a pawn. Less than half are winning. More than half are drawing, right? So normally to win a rook and pawn ending, you need to have 2 out of 3 advantages. An extra pawn, or a more active rook, or a more active king. There's only kind of like, there's normally like 3 main positional factors in a rook ending. Does that make sense, Paul? There's like how many pawns you have, how active your rook is, and how active your king is. In theory, the 4th feature would be like pawn structure, or something like that. But let's call that a secondary feature compared to the other 3. And then there could be like immediate things like you've got 2 pawns on c7 or d7 and they're about to both queen. And your opponent has, you know, 4 pawns on the king side, but it doesn't matter. But, you know, anything that's like incalculable, anything where you're going to apply sort of strategic or positional understanding or insight, right? You're going to say, does white have an extra pawn? Yes. Does white have a better rook? No. Does white have a better king? A worse king. Slightly. So, it should be a draw. So fg6, king g6. Oh, sorry. So rook b6. And Foos was worried that after fg, it's double check. You have to take with your king, not your pawn, and then your king is cut off. Is the black king being cut off a factor? When you look at this Foos, what you'll see is it's not a factor. And the reason is the white king is cut off by the same file. You see what I mean? If the white king ever tries to get into the middle of the board to help the d pawn, it blocks that rook and the black king can come in. Also, the rook is busy doing this, so it can't go defend the b pawn or whatever, right? So if you want to keep the advantage of that king being cut off, you'd have to do something like rook here, king here. You keep the rook cutting off the king, and you bring your king into the middle of the board. But in the time you're doing that, black cleans up your pawns, so now, I mean, there's nothing to win with. Alternatively, you might think this rook f4 move looks a little bit better, but what you'll see is if black just pokes the rook has to stay on the f file for the king cut off to be a factor, which means it can't defend the pawns on the 4th rank. So again, then we're looking at something like, you know, rook f7, rook takes pawn. Obviously, we're not going to win off of this king being cut off anymore, right? We're just going to take these pawns, sack this pawn, and agree to a draw. So Yeah, the king being cut off could be a factor. If white's king were already on e3, for example, same position, or let's say it's on e1, right? King on e1. Same position, you could maybe play fg, king g, king d2, rook takes b4, king c3. And material's equal, but you could show a positional advantage for white, right? Because the black king would be cut off from the passed pawns. So there you could have the idea your king's on c3, you play king c4, d5, you try to advance the pawn with your king and pawn as sort of a unit together, and the a pawn is going to be weaker, right? Because your opponent's king is cut off on g6. That would be an example where this factor of the king being cut off would be a factor. Here with your own king on this side of the file, and the fact that you're using the whole rook to do it, but all your pawns are getting eaten, you can't defend your pawns and cut off their king and get your king into the game fast enough for it all to come together. So this game's probably going to end in a draw. Rook a1 is played. I would expect black to play g takes f now. Probably, so rook check. You could play king g6. Looks also like rook b4, rook check, king here is drawish enough. Rook a7, you take here. But you do have to play down a pawn then for black. Oh, you wouldn't play pawn takes pawn, you'd play rook takes d4. That's super drawn. Super drawn. Okay, so gf5 is super dead, and rook b4 is super dead. Rook b4 is getting played. Symbolically, white had the advantage, but we're going to just drop it down and down and down, folks. I am guaranteeing you it's going to be a draw. I'm just slowly letting the eval bar come down as everything clarifies here in the position. This looks like the players have played it very, very accurately, honestly, to me. King f6 comes in. Now maybe fg, hg, rook d7, king e6, driving the rook off of defending the pawn, right? Rook d8, king e7, rook d5, king e6. It's a chess maneuver that I call a pendulum. The rook's got limited space to keep this defended. And you just go back and forth. Right, the rook keeps trying to defend this pawn. And you can keep following it. They could throw in the check, I guess. And we could go do another pendulum on the other side, right? Rook defends the pawn. Oh, you guys are going to remember the pendulum after today. Oh, y'all are going to remember this. Right? So it's a limited space to defend the pawn. You can sometimes get a direct forced draw just by chasing it with the king. It's not that black would lose this endgame if they didn't have the pendulum, by the way, folks. This position is draw, draw, draw. You could also draw it, let's say in this position here, you could draw it simply by cutting off your opponent's king. Right? And your king's close enough to this pawn to stop it. Your rook can go to d2. There's no way to win this position for white. You have an extra pawn, but you've got a worse king. So you don't have any chances to convert it. So black doesn't need the pendulum to draw here. But the pendulum is an important technique to know, in my opinion. Let's see how the game's going. Rook a6 check is played. Okay. So against king f5, white would then play rook d6, and the king can't immediately attack there. And against king e4, you could take, check, trade rooks, rook and pawn ending, king here, king here. The king and rook pawn against king is a draw. So, yeah, this position is a draw. This position is a draw. Carissa has won 3 out of 3 white games so far. With black, she won 1 game and lost 2. Tomorrow, she's got black against BB Sara. So that's going to be maybe the biggest pressure crunch for Carissa now. King F5 played over here. I don't actually know that myself, Foos. But the endgame I was looking at was with rooks traded, so simply king and rook pawn against king. And this is the variation I was looking at. Rook d6, king here, rook takes, rook takes. If white trades the rooks, you always have to check, because most king and pawn endings are lost down a pawn, so you always have to check the simple forced king and pawn endings, but it's an easy draw here. And if white did something like rook f6 instead, well, yeah, it's an easy draw because black can always offer rook trades. So the black king's never really cut off because the king and pawn ending's a draw. And white's king is like many steps away from threatening anything. So even if you had the king cut off by more files here, it would probably still be a draw. Just off of the fact that white needs a whole bunch of moves before they even start threatening anything. In the game, Maria goes d5, Zagnidze plays rook d4. They've got plenty of time, but the position's so obvious that they're playing, 30, 40 seconds per move. Just simple stuff. Gets behind the pawn. If you push it, black can play king here. They can also just play rook d2. Totally fine. They can play g5. There's honestly no moves that don't draw at the moment other than hanging your rook. It's very, very far from threatening. So we're going to keep dropping our symbolic advantage for white. And we're coming up on the end of this mini stream as this game here winds down. Maybe I could have a look at some of the early moves of Carissa's exciting game, which I didn't see. You can also see the start of this game here. Logical play from white that could have led to an opening advantage, but black deals with it nicely. Interesting. F5's coming. Black's making us wait for f5. Never plays it. White looks a little bit better. Wins a pawn. But it's never enough to really threaten black, huh? Cool. Yeah, white was sort of symbolically better for quite a bit of the game, but never enough for black to be in danger. Black was never even forced to play only moves. I think they always had a few moves that could have been enough to survive. Let's go down here to Carissa's game and just see the full thing. So I think the normal move here is like d4, right? Open Rui? Or should black have already played b5? Wow. Very brave. Carissa uses the bishop, not the pawn, to defend d4, and then grabs more space with it. Gets kicked. Humpy wants to show the power of this bishop. The knight finally has a square to get out of the way of that bishop. God, my computer is responding so slowly. Knight f8, queen b3. Saying you can't play bishop g4 without allowing queen b7 and the collapse of the queen side. Could black play rook b8? Maybe. But Humpy just challenges her. Only thought 1 minute on this move, too. Carissa, an hour and 32 on the clock here. So was she in prep or something? Anyway, she takes the pawn. Queen d7, stopping queen c6. So the full collapse is averted. d5. Yeah, logical. Pressing her pawn. Some kind of a threat of queen c6, queen h2 with a draw. After f4, black can just give perpetual check. So queen h3 is a threat, so white plays knight e4 to stop it. Bishop e5 to keep the bishop. Now queen h3, there's simply knight to g3. So now white has this nice pawn majority in the center, but the weakened king. It looks messy here, like there could be knight g6 to h4 or f4, or there could be h5, h4. It looks very, very violent and double-edged, and like tough choices. Knight g6 played, rook e3, chasing her out, and then d6. Now, we know that black let her play d7 next move, which was winning. You can see our other board, they've been repeating positions. I will have a 1/2, 1/2 appearing over there in a moment. Why did black not take this pawn? The rook on e8 is hanging. So taking it would look like pawn takes, bishop takes, with an extra pawn for white, but plenty of counterplay for black. I mean, just forever you're going to have chances against this king. Well, not forever. I mean, until this c pawn gets to c7, but you've got a while. With this a6 pawn, like this pawn's not going to be a threat for quite a while. So you have a lot of time to score a perpetual. Again, either with the knight or the pawn coming forward. Draw agreed over here by Maria and Nana. Well played game. Really quite a fairly balanced battle. So bishop takes d6. Yeah, I do not understand this. Humpy apparently thought quite a while on this. 10 minutes. She was already getting low on time. She allows d7. Pawn gets defended. And I don't know how she thought she was going to fight this pawn. I mean, she got forced win for white 2 moves later, or 1 move later. This looks like the fateful move from Humpy. If pawn takes, bishop takes, as far as I can see, you've just got a game on your hands. I guess it favors white a bit. Yes, I still believe in Carissa's position. But it looks like a fight, and the other looked like resignation. So I think, at least from a practical perspective, this feels like a big mistake. Let me see what the computer thought about this moment. The computer says queen e6 and c takes d6 are both very close to equal. It says h5, allowing pawn takes pawn, h4 is somewhat good for white, but messy. And I'm sure it's going to say queen c4 is losing, basically. Queen c4, question mark, d7, rook d8, rook d1. It doesn't say it's completely dead, but it clearly gave white the advantage. Maybe the queen had somewhere else to go. It says queen g4 mistake, but queen g4 is the move my computer engine was saying was the only move here. That's weird. Rook d4 double question mark. Black could just take it, says the computer. It says here white should have played rook d3. This computer is so bad, though. Like, black's played all the top moves it recommended, and now it says white's winning. So I do think that this queen c4 move was basically the losing move of the game. That computer's so dumb, it's pretty useless to talk to it anymore. But yeah, this does seem probably the culprit move from Humpy. Interesting, there's this other move that looks pretty solid, actually, of queen e6. Yeah. All right, well, that's today's games, folks. Sorry for a few little technical hiccups there on Twitch. I don't think we had those problems on with the YouTube stream. I don't think the YouTube stream was ever dying. So I don't know if that's specifically Twitch related issues. I know my computer was kind of choking, but somehow YouTube managed to eke the thing out, I guess. But let's send a raid. I would raid St. Louis Chess Club, but I did that a couple days ago, and their stream was done by the time we got there. Hikaru and Eric playing Title Tuesday. Hans Niemann playing Title Tuesday. People playing Title Tuesday. Title Tuesday. Title Tuesday. I guess we have to find a player who's not titled, right, folks? Moons. That's good to hear, Paul. Thank you. Let's see if I got this right even. Moons. All right. And with any luck, I'm going to do the same thing tomorrow, which will be a critical round for Carissa and Alice. Or maybe they've got a bye tomorrow. I thought the tournament went all the way till Friday. We'll see. I wish you all a good rest of your Tuesday or Wednesday for those of you who are really fast and are already on Wednesday. Bye.